Welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. In each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different, and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, On2Air Backups. On2Air Backups provides automated Airtable backups to your cloud storage for secure and reliable data protection. Prevent data loss and set up a secure Airtable backup system with On2Air Backups at On2Air.com. As one customer, Sarah, said, having automated Airtable backups has freed up hours of my time every other week and the fear of losing anything. Longtime customer David states, On2Air Backups might be the most critical piece of the puzzle to guard against unforeseeable disaster. It's easy to set up, and it just works. Join Sarah, David, and hundreds more Airtable users like you to protect your Airtable data with On2Air Backups. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at On2Air.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air.
Welcome back to the Built on Air podcast. We are in episode 6 of season 21. Good to be with you again. Got myself and Alli with us. Camille is out sick this morning, but we should be joined shortly by Ben Green from Optimize IS. There he is. Let's put him in. Welcome, Ben.
Hello.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, Alli. Hi, Dan. Excited to be back.
Good to have you with us, Ben. We'll get more into what Ben is up to in a later segment. So I'll walk us through the show, what we're going to be talking about. Well, we start with our Round the Bases, keep you up to date on everything new and exciting in this world. Then a shout out to our sponsor, On2Air and On2Air Backups. Then Ben is going to scripting time, but without the scripting. So scripting without code. Ben's going to show us some tricks that he's got in that realm. And then Alli is going to answer an audience question on kind of around updating prices based off of a price sheet deal dynamically. Then a shout out to join our community. Then finally, I'm going to end. This is actually, I think, the first time I've used this new segment. We're calling it Feature Alert. Talk about like a specific feature, typically a new feature. So we're going to do a demo of the Mailhook automations that have recently launched. So with that, we're going to talk about around the bases. First of all, if you are an Eagles fan, we just had the Super Bowl, so we'll start there. If you misspell Eagles, it looks like Google gives you a nice little surprise for the Super Bowl winning Philadelphia Eagles. Relatively boring game that was, but last year we did a segment all about how to track for the Super Bowl and the playoffs and everything. I think Max came on, so we didn't do that this year. Maybe that's why the game was boring. We didn't have that. So anyways, shout out to any Philadelphia fans. On a similar note, Rand Fishkin, who is a very well-known name in the software SaaS world, marketing, talked about AI. So I'm assuming he didn't say this was for the Super Bowl. I'm assuming it was. I don't remember an OpenAI. I didn't watch all the commercials. But anyways, talks about how they spent $14 million on the TV ad and they didn't use AI to create it. They did it all by hand. So if you're worried that OpenAI and AI is taking over, still got a little ways to go when the company behind it is still using humans to make their advertisements. So that's probably good news for us. Any Super Bowl comments before we move on? Justin said it was a pretty cool ad. I'll have to watch it after.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it. Some of them were really strange, but I laughed really hard. There was one with Seal, the
Mountain Dew, I think. Yeah.
I had him like as a seal. It was really silly.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Yeah, my kids. Well, you guys are young. My kids were like, "Who is that?" I was like, "You don't know who Seal is?"
Love it.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. A couple highlights from Airtable. If you're looking to work for Airtable, there's a couple openings. It looks like on the services team. If you'd love to work directly with Airtable, they've got there. They're also looking for some fresh new grads on the software development side for the product. So if you know of anybody recently graduated in computer science or similar, looks like they're growing. So that's good. Be a good place to work at Airtable. And finally, one more. If you'd like to keep up on the CEO, Howie Liu, and what he's up to, looks like he recently spoke at a branding convention, and some takeaways, and basically around how AI is working within the workflows and how you can use it within Airtable, and how that works out. So if you want to hear what he's saying about the future of AI and how it impacts Airtable, you can check out that presentation there. Okay, next, a couple announced new things. We've talked about these for a while. This first one, preserved object IDs when cloning bases. Anybody want to explain what that is?
I'm so happy about this one. The only thing I'm bummed about it is that it was not released a couple weeks ago when I really could have used it for a client.
Really?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So previously, if you either cloned a base or restored a base from a snapshot, it would create a new version of the base with all brand new table IDs, field IDs, record IDs, view IDs, etc. Because it was a brand new instance of that base, which ordinarily isn't a huge deal, but where it becomes a problem is if you're restoring a snapshot in order to like find data that was lost via like data entry errors, or somebody deleted stuff, or in my case, I had a client that went to a view and pasted a bunch of new records, but she had the view sorted. So when she added a new record at the bottom, it tried to resort itself by bringing it up to the top. And when she hit paste, it overwrote all the records in the view instead of adding 200 more.
Mm-hmm.
So because the primary field was a formula field based on all the values that were in the table, the primary field changed for all of the records. And so when we restored the snapshot, the only way to tell what record was what previously was to look at the revision history in the current base and be like, well, the name used to be this, so we have to go now find it over here, that name. And it was just a nightmare. So if this had been live back then, all I would have had to do was grab the record IDs and be like, this record ID is this record ID. These are the same records. Here's what it used to be. Long story, but yeah. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, I felt
Fishing
so
through
bad.
revision history.
Yeah, it was such a mess. I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. The interesting one is record IDs. So if you were assuming that a record ID is globally unique, it no longer is. I think this is the first time, because if you sync data from one base to another, the record IDs are not the same. And so that's kind of interesting. If you clone a base, you'll get the same record IDs, but if you sync data from a table, you'll get different record IDs.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's partially because if you clone it and there's the same record ID exists in those two bases, but then you took like those two tables and did a multi-source sync in a third base, you wouldn't want the duplicate record IDs there. So I think that's probably why the destination of a sync has different record IDs than the source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But now if you synced from two bases that were cloned, you would get the same source record ID, right?
The same source, yes, but it would still have a new record ID.
Destination. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we'll see what kind of fun that creates. But yeah, so always use the base ID will always be unique. So if you're looking for unique IDs, concatenate the base ID with whatever, and that should be unique.
Exactly.
There could be speaking of like unique identifiers and deduplicating bases, there could be a theory that the US government uses Airtable to keep track of everybody's social security numbers, because Airtable doesn't force you to dedupe the database. I saw there was some tweet referencing something that Elon had said in their whatever he's doing with the government. The database of US social security numbers allegedly has duplicates in it. Or like they allow duplicates to happen, which Airtable allows duplicates in the primary field to happen. So, and he said specifically that the government was not using SQL because somebody had commented back. So maybe they're using Airtable.
Wow. Now
they just have a bunch of tables.
That means, yeah, that means they have a much higher record limit than I do.
Yeah. Maybe they're using HyperDB. They just migrated.
Yeah.
But even that's only 100 million right now. 3 instances or 4 instances of HyperDB.
There you go. There's a good conspiracy theory for you. Airtable runs the government.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, one more. Gallery improvements in interfaces. I believe we've already mentioned this one. Maybe not. Is this brand new or has this been around?
I noticed it yesterday for the first time. It's you can now select between 1 and 3 columns per row. That was old, and that was something that was in the original gallery element from the inception of interfaces. But I think they're just bringing it back. But what I find really nice is the aspect ratio option. You can choose whether it's like tall, square, or I can't remember what the third option is. But it basically just makes the image either be, nice and tall or square.
Or like fit.
Yeah, or fit maybe the other one. Yeah.
Wide, maybe.
Yeah. I like it. I played around with it yesterday. There's some cool options. What I did find, though, is the tall one, while it looks nice, it's huge. It like takes up the entire screen. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. So gallery improvements in interfaces. So those are the 2 new ones that have been published. Yeah, next one. This is from the BuiltOnAir community. Kind of similar discussion about OpenAI, kind of an open-ended question. So OpenAI operator, which I believe is basically inside the browser, allows you to manipulate browser actions through AI. And I know I haven't played with OpenAI's. I have played with Google's version of this, and it's pretty interesting. So the question is that basically going to take over no-code, low-code consultants' job of building things? Can you just do it all through OpenAI commands inside the browser? What are your thoughts?
I saw something yesterday, maybe it was this morning, about a similar topic to this, not specifically with operator, but with AI in general and how that impacts like people in low code or no code or code. And what it was saying was AI is like first going to replace the most in the coding side of things because it can code, but what it won't replace is like the requirements gathering and defining like speaking with people and figuring out like what it actually needs built. Because that is the harder part, is what this person was saying, is actually like working with people and getting people to adopt a tool. So potentially some of the configurations, like we've already seen it with AI Co-Builder, it currently does the first maybe 25% of an interface if you're starting from scratch. But it doesn't yet speak with users to gather requirements.
Yeah, definitely will be an interesting future.
I had a really hilarious conversation with ChatGPT over the weekend where it hallucinated wildly. And then when I called it out, it like marveled at what a cool fake idea it had. It was like, but wouldn't that be awesome though? And I was like, that is weird. Like, yeah.
All right, next one. Looks like I think we did mention previously that they did an update to the iPad app. And so Scott Rose is pointing out that they fixed long-standing bug that made Airtable unusable from an iPad web browser. Many of Airtable screen elements were completely untappable and therefore unusable, but it looks like it's all working again. So that is good news.
Excellent.
So it looks like that wasn't for the app itself, but if in the browser, if you were browsing from a tablet.
Very good.
All right, last one, kind of keeping on the AI theme. We've got Airtable backend with AI web builders like Bolt, Lovable. This is something I've kind of been curious about. I've been kind of following some of these apps, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. So like kind of the legacy ones, Softer, Glide, all of them are incorporating AI, but there's some new ones that are like built from the ground up as AI front end builders. Bolt and Lovable are the ones that they mention. And so he's wondering if any are built on top of Airtable as kind of the data source. So one that I've been kind of following closely, I think Camille has as well, as WeWeb. They're launching an AI front end builder, I think this week actually. I saw on their newsletter. I don't know. What are you guys seeing in this space?
I haven't really seen a lot of people with using full-on AI web builders. More along the lines of like Softer. You know, they've got all sorts of different places you can use AI, like to help type your like landing page text or even create images right within Softer, which is really cool. But yeah, I haven't actually done any playing with like full front to back AI web app builders.
Yeah. Anything you're seeing, Ben?
No.
Not following
Just
that.
Softer.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. The WeWeb demo I saw, it was pretty crazy. You just describe it and then you can modify it as well. It's not just one time like co-builder. Like you can actually say, okay, I like that, but change this, and it'll actually like recreate the screen. And then from there, you can manually make changes if you want to. So it's a good like starting place to build something. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the front end world evolves with AI. And I'm sure Airtable, it's on their roadmap to continue to evolve their co-builder to be, just making, tweaks or modifications just through AI instead of manual.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, Replit is pretty. I don't know if you guys have ever played with Replit. I played with it long ago. It started as kind of like a hobby builder, but then they really adopted early the AI wave, and it's pretty amazing. You can build full blown apps with it now, both web and mobile. It's pretty interesting one to watch.
Very cool.
Okay, that kind of concludes our Round the Bases. You're now up to date on everything going on in the Airtable world. Next, we have our sponsor, OntoAir. If you run your business on Airtable, it's best practice to make sure your data is stored outside of Airtable. That's where OntoAir Backups comes in. It will back up your data onto Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, or OneDrive. And you can rest easy knowing that your data, your attachments, your meta information about your schema is stored externally. We also offer the ability to back up or to restore your data back into Airtable from your backup. So check it out, ontoair.com. You can use promo code BuiltOnAir for a discount and get started backing up your data today. Okay, Ben, show us the ways scripting without code. You want to share your screen?
Yeah, happy to. So some of this may be fairly basic for Dan and Alli, but as somebody who does not have a passion for writing code or understanding code that has already been written, this is like I'd say the method that I have become accustomed to in Airtable if I can't use a tool like Zapier or Make. So I'm gonna, let's see. Before I jump into that, are you guys part of like AI labs? Is that a thing that is able to be spoken about? Do you know?
I think it is. I see it on screens where you can like apply to join or enable it, right?
Dan, what do you think?
We'll ask for forgiveness if needed.
Well, AI labs, I think it's something that everybody can sign up for if you're a part of AI. But I was just thinking about this, about generating interfaces using AI and Airtable from on top of an app you've already built. And if you click on like the AI thing, if you in the admin panel, you have to like probably accept some NDA that I'm not going to try to remember what it says about AI labs. But one of the things I think recently, like within the last few months that they added was you can you can add things to your existing base. So you can add interfaces to your existing base. You can create dashboards, create tables, as well as create an automation. So I'm not actually going to demo this, but if you're interested in AI, I think AI interfaces, like we were just talking about with like those other tools, this is potentially something that could let you build new things on top of a base, but not necessarily like enhance an existing interface.
Yeah, I think I know somebody shared that screenshot in the community, so I think we're okay.
I don't know if this is like, I think my favorite thing just as a part of AI labs that I like was pleasantly surprised with that I saw come up one time is it suggests the field type. I don't know if this was already this may be very old news, but I saw this one day and I was like, that's so nice. I don't have to like go search for the field. I just say due date and then it says, hey, you should create a date field. Anyways, okay. So scripting without code. I took some coding classes in college, so like I have a little bit of fundamental knowledge, but I think this is applicable for anybody who has never coded before, and you just want to like do something like, maybe creating an API call is something you want to do. And an API call is basically you're using this other tool that has an API and you want the data in that tool to talk with the data in your Airtable. So this is like a demo environment that I'm going to use just with a bunch of fake data. The example that I'm going to show is I want to connect this with Asana. That used to be like a pretty common thing that people would ask me to do, is create some integration, usually on Zapier or Make, where something would happen in Airtable and I want to go create a task for myself or somebody on my team in Asana. That could be a use case, or maybe you want to like migrate your data from Asana because you're getting rid of it and you'd rather use Airtable. Could be another good use case for making an API call to Asana. I've been doing this in Airtable automations, and like I don't want to use something like Zapier or Make. So I have a test one that I was playing with earlier, but I'm just going to start from scratch on this. So I'd say like the 101 that you should know about like API calls in general that I think is like not so much related to scripting, but is just in general, you should understand what CRUD means, which is create, read, update, and delete. Those are generally the 4 functions that you would ever perform from my perspective. Correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the main 4 functions that you would ever perform when you are making an API call, or you're wanting like to make this Airtable data talk to the data in a different tool like Asana. And an example would be, I want to create a task, or I want to go get a task from Asana. So you want to read that task, which is the R. You may want to go update the status of a task, or you maybe want to delete a task. Those are like, that's CRUD. The 4 things that something happens in Airtable, then you want to go do this thing in Asana. Is that accurate, Dan and Alli?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the easy part that I'm going to show is the trigger. So I'm going to say something happens and I want to push a task to Asana. I want to go create a task in Asana. I think I created a checkbox that is just trigger. So this is going to be so trigger and then go create a task in Asana. And there's no like native Asana integration. There's all these other ones in here. There's everything from Salesforce to Jira to Facebook, but there's no Asana. So you're kind of stuck with this option that is run a script. Now this is like where most people, including myself, before like maybe like 6 months or a year ago, I would just like stop here and like go try to figure out some other way of doing it because I never wanted to mess with any of this. And I think to this day, I still haven't really like, I don't think I've written a full line of code in this scripting block because I don't particularly want to. But it's possible to do all of this without writing a line of code. So what I use is just ChatGPT. ChatGPT, I found I can do pretty much everything as long as you can talk through the concepts like we just talked about CRUD. As long as you understand those kind of 4 different actions you might take with the API, you can do most things. So what I would do in here is I would say, I am using Airtable automations, and I want to create a task via the Asana API in Asana. Can you give me the automation script to do this? So it's going to give you, it knows Airtable automations is going to use JavaScript. So it's going to say, go get your API key. So if I go here, one just note is the other thing that's kind of core to understand about automation scripts in Airtable is you may want to make things dynamic. So the other core concept you should understand before doing this is static data and dynamic data. Static data is something that's going to be like the same every single time. So maybe you're fine with like every time you create a task, it's going to have the same status every time that's like to do or incomplete or something like that. That is what I would consider as static data. It's going to be something you don't want it to change for every record that you pass to Asana. Dynamic data is something like the due date or the assignee or the task name, where every time you pass that task into Asana, that piece of data for that task may be different. The project that task is linked to may also be different. And that is dynamic data. Dynamic data, I would typically suggest passing through, or anything you want to easily be able to change, I would suggest passing it through input.config. So back in here, I notice it like it sets a few of these as constants, I think is what those are called. Yep. But I'm just going to ask it to convert all of that to input config. I don't know if it did it for the API key, but I'm also going to have it do it for the API key. And I think that is also one downside currently, and I won't spoil any Airtable product updates potentially coming to the API key or having a secret, but I'll leave that the way I said it. So all of these, it's now replacing these as input config. So once this is done creating the script, I'm just going to copy it and put it into Airtable.
It's pretty cool how well it knows the environment, because that's very specific to Airtable.
Yeah.
And to Asana, like it's got to know the structure that Asana wants as well. And that's to me, writing API calls, like that's like the hardest part is like learning the documentation of the app you're trying to, access their API. So this is awesome.
So once you copy it in here, when you're first setting it up for these input variables, you have to go to each one of these like input config pieces. And I think it would say this in the description in ChatGPT, but just to save time, I'm going to copy each one of these and put it in over here on the left. This is also, you'll see this commonly. This is called camel case, I believe, is when just like the notation of it, you'll see this all the time from software developers like Dan. I'm going to call Dan out. Dan probably uses camel case on the back end of OnTair backups. Am I accurate, Dan?
Usually, yes.
Camel case is like a widely accepted thing where the first letter is lowercase, and then every word thereafter, the first letter is uppercase. I'm going to pretend like I know all this stuff. So the one step we skipped. So yeah, you can see here, it does say create those input variables. We never got the API key. So you would have to go to that link and find where it said create a personal access token. You have to create a token. And then you copy this token right here. Thankfully, both of these workspaces are not live, so you won't get anything. So the project ID, this is something you're going to want to pass through. I'm going to pass most of this as static. If you want, you ideally would have some of this data structure mapped into your Airtable to where you'd be able to pull the project ID. I don't, so I'm just going to pretend I always want to create a task in the same project every time, and that's going to be this vendor onboarding project. A lot of times, Airtable included, the like unique identifiers are stored in the URL, and if you want to know like what's the project ID, you can often like just click around and be able to tell. So in Asana, if I click around, I notice that the second ID in the URL changes. So if I change from list to overview, that changes. So that tells me that that's like which visualization I'm looking at. Mm-hmm. Most likely like this. I know, in fact, in Asana that this first number is the project ID. So I'm going to make that static every time. I'm going to make that the project ID. Here, for fun, to show dynamic data, I will pull the name of the task. So using the little blue plus, you can pull anything from your triggering record or any step prior to it. You can also pull in any notes. And then assignee email that I'm going to type in my email, or you could pull in an email from the base. I think when I was testing this earlier, I had a date in here and it did want the dates formatted very specifically, like YYYY-MM-DD. And so if you have something like that, where you may have to play back and forth with ChatGPT, is like formatting, making sure the data is cleansed and like is in the right format when you send it. Mm-hmm. So to start off, this should have an error because I know it's missing certain things that it didn't think of. But I'm going to test this and show how debugging also works without having to learn how to code. So I know it should be missing something that is called the organization ID, but maybe it did fine. It looks like it was fine. So I created something that should have edit product descriptions for online, and it's right there. Yes. So it actually didn't even have a single error the first time. That's incredible.
It always scares me a little bit when that happens. I'm like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong?
Yeah, I planned for an error to happen to show.
I do right.
One error that I had earlier was like I had given ChatGPT my secret and it put it wrong in the script. So just to show an error, I can like mess with my API key, so it should have an error. And then sometimes what I would do is just feed this error then back into ChatGPT. So whenever I had an error, like if the data wasn't formatted right, I would just like feed it back in. And so then it like kind of gives you a response, or maybe it's going to like output the error in a more readable format that I'll then pass back into ChatGPT. The nice thing that I've noticed about ChatGPT, because I've seen some like scripts that, whether it's people on my team or scripts I've seen from other people that they've made, is the output from ChatGPT is always like the output of this scripting action is typically very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Now I wish, okay, copy this. So I'm going to test that again to show what the output looks like. And we'll copy this. Typically when I'm like, I created this task in Asana, I now want to go update Airtable. This is when I would shift back and just use the native things in Airtable because of things like changing field names. I don't want to have to worry about that in my script. Mm-hmm. That's like one of the main things from my point of view on why I'd want to do that. And the console.log, all of this like should come out, I think, as a good output. So if I go like add a new step and go update the record in the tasks table using the record ID from the trigger. Let's see. I just want to show, hopefully. Okay, all it output was the Asana task ID. So what I would tell ChatGPT is please output all details of the So because it only gave me like the ID of the task, I wanted to include any other details. Like maybe there's certain defaults set on that project that I want to bring in, or maybe something happens in Asana that doesn't happen in Airtable. I would just ask it to update the script. It's going to go rewrite it. And this is how I script without scripting.
I just saw something in that script that I have never seen before. At the very top, where it's defining the constants, where it's got, Dan, you would know better than I'm entirely self-taught, so I don't know what I don't know. Where it says constant task notes equals input config dot task notes or no description provided. Is that something you can do with all variables? Like if it's not,
if it's null or an empty string, then it'll go to the default. So that's very common to set a default value. I
had no idea you could do that. That is awesome. I usually use like a ternary, but that looks like it's so much cleaner. I like that.
Yeah.
So this still didn't even do it the way that I like. I think I can probably find a different one that did output it the right way, but I think there's a way with output.site you can basically have it return everything kind of in I want to say it's like kind of in JSON format, but then it's like you don't have to look at it in JSON. It still outputs everything as like every single piece of data that it found in the API that like dynamically returns it all. So this one, it looks like it's still setting things individually, which is why it looks like this, but I've seen ChatGPT do it better than this as well.
I think you can only output strings and arrays.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it's a little annoying because if you try and output something that's null, it will give you an error. And then if you're trying to if you don't always have the same variable names and you're trying to output them all regardless, you have to do some major configuration to get it to all work, because if you're missing one, it'll error later on in the automation, which is quite frustrating.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I love this. This is great.
Anything else?
I think that's the main thing. I can just say, as somebody who doesn't really want to write any code, this has been a game changer for me, because a lot of times clients they either don't want to use a different tool for some security reason, or they just like actually are prevented from using these other tools. And so being able to do something like we did this in probably 10 minutes, just like make an API call to another tool, so long as you can understand, I would say, CRUD and dynamic versus static data, you're going to be able to tell ChatGPT to write you pretty much anything and just keep feeding the errors back into it. And I've found it's like I've been able to do most API calls. I can't think of any. Sometimes the only ones that get tricky that I've seen are like working with attachments. But outside of that, highly encourage ChatGPT scripting.
Yep. It's a must. Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Tell us, give us a quick update. Tell us where people can find you if they want to work with you.
The quick update is, let's see, I need to get the date right. So I think Jen might have been on here recently, and she's hosting this AI user group with Airtable. Was she on this podcast talking about that, or where she was somewhere talking about that?
We've talked about it. She hasn't been on in a while, so yeah.
So Jen hosts a group for AI, and then I'm hosting a group for marketing. So I know Jen has an event coming up, so I would encourage you to go check out Jen's. But on a week from today, in 20 minutes, so must be right after the BuiltOnAir podcast, I'm hosting a session that's Airtable Basics Advanced Interfaces for Marketers. So basically, we're taking a base from somebody who was using Airtable like 4 years ago, like mostly to its potential, kind of before interfaces were rolled out and before most automations were like really heavily used, and showing what it looks like to take that base and now like what changes would you make to use Airtable to its like fullest potential today. So I'll be going through that next week. This is in the Airtable community platform in the marketing user group. That's like one of the places that if you want to get in touch with me again, and then optimizeis.com is our website. But we do YouTube videos as well. So I don't know how many things I should plug, but I'd say either the YouTube channel or the website is the easiest.
I was going to ask, are you still doing lots of videos? I know it's been, so very prominent on YouTube, OptimizeIS, and marketing channel in the community. Awesome, Ben. Glad to have you back on. Feel free to reach out to Ben. Any questions on this front? Let's move on. Alli, going to answer a question from the community.
All right.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay, so this is a great question. Comes up a lot, and it's not really something that, in my experience, that you think about until it's caused a problem, and then you're like, oh wait, I should do something about that. So this person is asking how they can design a product table with valid from and valid to prices in a linked table. And this is quite a long post, but to summarize essentially what's happening, and this is a very common issue, as I said, is if you've got a table of products and you've got pricing for those products, say you're then linking those products to some line items for invoices or whatever it may be, and you're calculating based on that unit price what your subtotal is going to be. And these are old, so this is one of the very first bases I think I ever made on the, like, as an example for the forum, 2019 here. But these are old invoices, so theoretically I would not want to touch this invoice total. Like, this should be frozen in time. It was $140. I don't want that to change when I look back at my historical data. I want this to be always $140 because that's actually what the invoice total was at that time. But if I go change, and actually I just realized I need to make a quick change that I had already built this kind of thing into here. Let me just do some values. Excuse me. All right. And of course that already changed it, but starting over, if this was $144 and then I went and changed a couple of my prices to $25, $15, prices don't usually go down, but they can. Now all of my historical data is completely messed up. I don't know what the price used to be unless I go back and look at revision history. And I don't want that to happen. I want to not affect any historical data when I change the pricing of my products. So one approach to doing that is to actually create a table that is linked to your products. And we could call this product pricing. I'm just going to delete. No, am I frozen? Nope, there we go. Why? Delete all three of these fields. I'm going to link to my products, and I only want one product at a time. I'm going to include a currency field. We'll just call it price. And then what they had asked for specifically was like valid from and valid to as dates. So we could put in, you know, for item A, item B, item C. Let's see what those prices were beforehand. They were 17, 20, and 30. So 17, 20, 30. And let's say these were valid from 2019 up until today for all of those. And then I'm going to just create new ones and literally just grab what the prices are now and put them in here. So I'm going to then just for my primary field, I 99% of the time am always using a formula. And I'll just have if valid from and throw a quick thing in there. Okay. So we don't have a whole lot of time. So what I would do probably is set up a formula that says, all right, are we within these date ranges? And let's actually set this to yesterday. So you could have a formula field that essentially would say, if this date has passed, then this is inactive. And if this date is on or before today, then we're active. To save time, what I'm just going to do is use a single select to turn on and off the ones that are active and inactive. And if we have time, we can come back and write the formula afterwards. But essentially, we'll say these three are now inactive, and these are now my active prices. Now, if I group by product, and then I like to color by status. So I can always see these are going to be my active prices. And I want this value to be used if I create new line items tied to that product. So there's a few approaches from here. What I would do first is instead of having the unit price on my products table be an input, I want this now to be dynamic and be based on that new product pricing table that we just added. So what I could do is take this field. I'm just going to edit the same field and change it to a roll up. From my product pricing table, I want to grab the price, but only include the ones that are the status of active. Now, there are a couple caveats here. You have to make sure that you only have one that's active at a time, because if you have two that are active, you're going to get the sum of those two things. You could have some, error checking to like count how many are active and maybe output in here like a formula field that's like, warning, there's something wrong. But that's just something to note. So now on my line items, you could approach this in a few different ways. One approach is I have this unit price override field where I could set it up to say, okay, every time I send an invoice, I want to go through and just copy the value from this unit price field and put it here. So it freezes it in time. And then the formula that I had originally removed, because I forgot to do it before this call, would just say, if I have unit price override, I want to use that. Otherwise, use what's the current price of that product. That's one approach. Another approach, though, is you could actually link each line item here to the current pricing. And you could take advantage of this lovely new dynamic filtering to say, I only want to grab where products has any of dynamically the product that's on this row, and the status is active. So we'd call it that. So now for this, I'm going to be only showing, I should only see one option to choose from. And you could also use an automation to fill this field in. So as soon as you create a line item for a product, you could have an automation then go and grab the current pricing for that product and link it here, and then have your unit price be based off of this linked field, which would be dynamically changing as you're changing your pricing. So if we, just to actually show what it would have looked like if I had had this set up from the beginning, this would have been all the inactive pricing because these are the old invoices. Item A, item B, and then let's just take this and change it to be the product pricing price. And I'm just going to get rid of all of that and have it be the sum of that. So now I'm back to where I was at before for my subtotal, 144 for that invoice. But if I go now create a new one, and I would then put this filter back on, where status is active. So now I'm going to say this is for a new invoice, and the product is item A, and the pricing is this one. That was weird. I don't know what just happened there. I think I already had a record for that invoice, but either way, now you can see $15 for item A versus $17 a couple years ago. And it's going to be, it won't affect my historical pricing as I create new versions of that pricing. I hope all of that made sense.
Oh, yeah. You're essentially creating a versioning of pricing.
Exactly.
One active. Yep.
Exactly.
I've used that many times. I think I've usually went with like the linked record method. If you link it to this one, it kind of like stamps like what's the current price every time. But that only works, as you said, if there's one current price at any one time.
Exactly. And even like if you're going to use an automation, then you would really want there to only be one. But like maybe you have 3 different pricing options for the same product, depending on different clients or different, custom prices. You could have several different active versions. And then you'd be able to pick for each line item which one applies to this exact transaction or exact invoice. And I like this option as well because then you can see historically how your pricing has changed over time, whereas it's a little more difficult if you're just, freezing that value in a field.
This is a semi-related, but with the status field, now they have the AI ability to determine the value. Mm-hmm. Will it, if you give it a prompt that says, look at the valid dates, and if it's between those dates, set it to active, otherwise it's inactive, will it automatically change the status if you were to change the dates?
I don't have AI enabled on this workspace, so I don't actually know the answer. I haven't played with the single select AI fields. Do you know, Ben?
I do not know.
Yeah, I haven't played with that.
I think maybe if you had it on generate automatically, because I know when it's on generate automatically and a field value changes that it references, it does recalculate.
Because that'd be interesting, like automatic. I mean, I've done a lot of automations to figure out which one's the active one or whatever. But if the AI could do it automatically, that'd be pretty interesting.
For that one, I feel like you may be better off just using formulas anyways. If you can figure out how to write the formula,
true,
then using AI for it.
Well, yeah, that's true. Awesome. Thank you, Alli.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Finish. I'll be quick. Quick shout out. If you're not in our community, join us. BuiltOnAir.com/join gets you in and gets you access to thousands of Airtable users talking about it all day, as well as our amazing newsletter. Keep you up to date on all the news going on that goes out every week. So make sure you subscribe to that and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Okay, newly released Mailhook automations. So what I'm going to do is I took a screenshot of it. I know there's people out there that are wise enough to copy down the email address and potentially spam this. So I'm trying to block that. We'll see. Won't Russell call anyone out. But anyway, so I've got just a very basic database, and I actually set this up. I think I hit it enough where you can't get the full one to do this, but basically there is now a new trigger type that says when email received, and it will give you an email address going to an Airtable email inbox, and you can also put your own prefix on front of it. So that's kind of nice. So you can name it. So then it makes it easy to show up in your contacts or something. So anything you put here, it will actually put at the front of the email address along with some unique identifiers. So it knows to trigger this automation. And then we're just going to test this. This is my first time testing this. So we're going to see what we do. We had a couple questions last time of what do you actually get? So we're going to test it out. So I've got, show you a screenshot. I've got an email ready to go. I'm going to hit send here and blocked out the oops, I need to fix that. Okay, I had it in the CC. Okay, I'm going to send this and we're going to test it. Okay, I just sent it. And we're going back in here. Now we're going to test this trigger. See how long it takes to receive. Looks like it has not received. It has not received yet. Okay, let's try it again.
Yay.
There we go. All right. So we get a unique identifier for that email. That could come in handy. We've got our subject. We've got our sender is me, or to just the email address. It'll give you the CCs, reply to. It gives you the body. It gives you a date on when it was received, and it gives you the body in two formats, a text format. And I had, that's interesting. It put in, oh yeah, so this is Markdown. So it actually, so I had this text bold to see how it handled that. So it actually gives you the Markdown equivalent. And then here it gives you the HTML equivalent. And then it also gives you, I wondered how it dealt with attachments. So it basically gives you the file name and looks like it gives you a unique URL that you can use. So what we could do is we could just keep a log of all of our emails that we get sent into here. So I've got this here, and we can just map it to all of the fields. We'll just put the address for now. You could map all of them. And depending on what you want, this one I actually marked as Markdown as rich text. I also had another one for the HTML. And so we talked about the last one, the attachments.
Wait, quick question. So
Yep.
on the two recipients in the output, is it always going to be the same? Or like if I had sent it to like this email and Alli's email?
I think it's an array. It looks like it's an array, so it would give you both.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so a common, like I use HubSpot, and I have it to where you can automatically like BCC a HubSpot email address. So you could essentially recreate similar functionality to this, where you could always BCC an email address, and then it could go into here, and then you could put it into a log, and that gives us okay. Let's see. There we go. Let me test it. I guess. Okay, there we go. It didn't work. You got to send it again, huh?
You could do run as configured on the create record step. If you click automation history first, which is weird.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an annoying UI thing that
Yeah.
I've noticed recently.
I know,
Oh,
right?
there we go. Thank you.
Mhm.
There we go. Okay. Oh, no.
Weird. Apparently it did work the first time.
Yeah. Okay, so now you've got it. And then my attachment was a CSV file.
Oh, cool.
Very basic CSV file. So if you wanted to, so I know they have a way to like automatically email directly to a table and sync it. So this could replace it. You would need to write a script or have ChatGPT write you a script that would, you'd have to read in that from the URL, the attachment URL, parse the CSV, and then update it yourself. I was hoping maybe they would have like a action that could do that for you, but I don't believe they do. So you'd have to write that script yourself or get some help. And so yeah, so this kind of replaces that. It gives you more functionality because you can do whatever you want with that attachment, plus keep a history here. So it's pretty powerful. My big concern is like email volume is just so crazy. Like you got to be careful if you're wanting to log all your email this way. It could add up pretty quickly. So you might need to keep it clean or do something to delete them after a certain time or something. So
absolutely, it's interesting that it was bold. You bolded a part of your email, but then Airtable only put one asterisk around it, and then so it changed it to italic when it.
Yeah, that was a good call. Interesting. Yeah, so it didn't carry over. So I wonder if that's from the email client being a different syntax for how it does things. I don't know.
Could be on either end. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right, we're a little bit over. Thanks for sticking around. Thank you, Ben, for joining, Alli, and we will see you next week. So next week, watch our show, episode 7, then go straight to Ben's marketing workshop right after.
Awesome.
Everybody have a good week, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, OntoAir Backups, automated backups for Airtable. We'll see you next time on the Built on Air podcast.